In this movie, we're just going to go through looking at our basic Xcode SwiftUI project and get familiar with it. The first thing we need to do is have a look at the project itself. So on the left, you see I've selected the project. And as I'm clicking through, you can see some of the settings that you can change. Like here, I can scroll down and decide whether my app works in portrait or landscape left and right, and just little things like that. They're things that we might revisit later. If I right mouse click and go down to show in Finder, it will actually show the location of the project, and this should be where you save the project initially. So you can see that path there. The project itself is installed in one folder, so the project is there, but there's also a folder next to that. So if we ever get to a point where we need to send this to someone, we need to right mouse click on the higher level folder and choose compress. So we're not going to compress that file and send it to someone. We need both of these documents, or one's a file and one's a document. If we click on the folder there, you'll see a structure that mirrors exactly what's in our Xcode project in Xcode. So you can see how the project itself has a folder with it with documents attached. Returning to Xcode, let's have a look inside that folder. Each file has something to do with the project itself that we need to run. The first file is called appdelegate.swift, and that is there to control certain parts of our app. We don't really use it too much in SwiftUI, but it might be a place that we return to when we make a more complicated application. SceneDelegate.swift is a place that is used more commonly in iPad applications because it lets us have more than one screen at a time. You might notice this when you open in split screen or something like that. We're going to make an iPhone app, so we don't need to worry too much about that. ContentView.swift is the file that we're going to change the most because it's our initial screen that we're going to work on in SwiftUI. As we move into the assets area, we can put images, movies, and even our app icon in here. The launch screen.storyboard is where we set up our initial launch screen for our app, the one that flashes up quite quickly the first time you open an app. We do this in a very drag and droppy, very simple storyboard format, but that's okay because we don't need to add any code to this area. The info.plist area contains lots and lots of settings that we may need to include in our app. For instance, we might need to give permission and ask access to use, say, the camera or a GPS location. And you'll notice this with apps which use those, you'll get that pop-up screen. So if you need to use a camera in your app, it's really important that you add those settings here. Now we're going to return back to our contentview.swift. I'm going to show you some settings we can change to make our view of Xcode a bit easier. So you'll notice here my font size is quite big, and I've done that intentionally. I've gone to the editor, gone to theme, and choose presentation light. You might choose something a bit more defaulty when you're working, so you don't have such big writing to look at. But it's good for me to show you clearly what I'm writing. So there I am choosing presentation light. Some of the other things you can do is look at, there's 4 panels across the screen. And in the top right, you can see there's some orangey yellow icons. And as I click on them on and off, you can see I'm hiding parts of Xcode. This is really good to use when we're focusing on our code and looking at the changes. And we don't need to worry about accessing the project folder or anything like that. Now on the right hand side we have this area called a canvas, and that's a preview of our app. And if we hit the little icon up the top there on the right, we can actually see that we make sure we can turn on and off the canvas. This is actually a tool that could be really helpful if it works well for us. And you'll see that as we edit our code, we can get a live preview of our app. So let's give that a go now. I'm going to hit the resume button up the top here. And you'll see it actually load up a representation of a phone. I think in this case is going to be an iPhone SE. And it will show you what the app's going to look like. Now, without knowing too much about the coding, you might have a look at what's inside the contentview.swift. And really the only thing that's going to be shown to the screen is where it says text hello world. So hopefully we should see a app come up. It's actually taking a little bit of a while. Let's zoom out. And there it says hello world. So the only relevant code that is, I suppose, end user focused is that bit that says hello world. The rest of it is things that we need in the content views.swift file that helps the app run. So we'll try not to focus too heavily on that unless we need to. And as you can see, I'm going to change this to Mr. Brown, and you can see that live updates. Now, another thing that we can do is change my device. So up at the top of the screen, I'm just going to go to the area where we can see iPhone SE, and I'm just going to change that to an iPhone 11. And you can immediately see that switch over. So it works quite well in rendering that. Now, the other thing that you can do is launch what's known as a simulator. So you hit the play button up the top of the screen, and it will do a process where it builds and checks your code, and it will launch this separate application. And that is basically an emulator of an iPhone. Now, it takes a little bit to load. I've sped this up, so it may jump through a lot quicker than what your laptop might do. And then once it comes through, it will actually launch the iPhone simulator and launch the app so you can actually see it working. Now, this will actually give you more functionality than the canvas itself, but the canvas is a great place to start prototyping with. Hopefully, this has given you a good introduction to SwiftUI and Xcode, and we'll see you in the next movie.